joined us for health assessment training. We are broadcasting and recording this web conference through Skype meeting broadcast, and the audio can be heard through your PC speakers only. If you do not consent to being part of a recorded session, we ask that you please disconnect your browser at this time. The web conference recording will be available at skypeoperationframework.com/academy. If you have any questions for presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located either to the right-hand side of your screen or by scrolling down to below the video player. We have posted a few items there already and will continue to monitor that throughout the session. Now let's move on to the show. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Senior Customer Engineering Architect, Martin Renas. Martin, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Janice. Hi, welcome everybody to the health assessment training. This training is all about how you can minimize the project risk by assessing the health of an existing environment before you deploy a hybrid configuration and migrate users online. And we do this by assessing the architecture and configuration, infrastructure health, and call quality. But let's first things first. My name is Martin Renas, and I'm an architect on the customer experience and deployment team. Our team is part of the Skype for Business product group, and our team has following goals. We are there to enhance the customer and partner experience by capturing feedback to influence product direction, while enabling organizations of any size to get to our cloud service, as well as providing the best-in-class readiness and deployment services to our customers and partners. This session is part of the wider Skype Operations Framework training. We encourage you to review the Skype Operations Framework overview recorded training. Let's recap on why we created the Skype Operations Framework and what it is. The shift to the cloud changes the way that Skype for Business is delivered, moving from on-premise deployments to online deliveries. We have been asked to provide practical guidance to assist with planning, delivery, and operating Skype for Business online. We created the multifaceted approach of the Skype operational framework to provide that practical guidance and associated tools and assets, along with a common language of phases and stages to help drive a common understanding of the Skype for Business online lifecycle. To help folks get on board, we have the Skype Academy to host sessions like this, and also technical product training. And finally, we have feedback mechanisms. SOF is a living framework. We are working on updates on a regular basis, so please visit our site on a regular basis to get the latest material. As we are going to find out in today's session, the Skype Operations Framework is a living, breathing framework for Skype for Business Online. We will be adding new content and working on updating delivered assets. We will be updating the training material to cover major updates, but we encourage you to always be working with the latest assets which might have been released since this session was recorded. Now, let's get on today's session, the health assessment training. Think about the overall stage you're in. We are right now at the very early phase of plan, and we are performing some assess activities here. Why is that important? And this is something that you probably, if you've worked with a lot of deployments already, you've seen and experienced yourself. And here's an example that I've seen. I've worked with a customer in a project where we migrated users from on-premises to online. And after we've completed the first batch of migrations, there was a big escalation and a lot of complaints from some customers, from some of the employees, that they had issues with peer-to-peer sharing. But then it turns out that by moving them to the cloud and moving them to a different hosting facility, that this should not affect any of the peer-to-peer sharing, as this is totally unrelated to the service we're providing. And it turns out that there were some network issues along with some driver issues causing the issue. But in the end, we were we've been asked to fix the issue because it was somewhat related to the move that we did, or to something that just happened here. It really gets back to the issue that, or to the fact that once you touch it, the problem is now yours. And the session here is really to help you, to save you from going through some of those type of experiences. And to me, this is really why this health assessment exists, because before you want to do anything to the environment, before you introduce hybrid and move people to a different to Skype for Business Online, you want to assess the current environment ahead of time, so that you know in which state the environment is in, if the environment is already ready to go to online, or if there are any things that need to be remediated first. So in essence, it's really there to minimize the project risk and assess the health of the environment before you deploy the configuration. The health assessment training is in addition to the existing Envision discovery session. And this training addresses how you can leverage various tools to analyze and assess an existing on-premise environment, and leverage the key health indicators and various other tools to capture call quality and call reliability information that will give you a good overview of the current health status of that environment. As I said, the health assessment is an additional module to the existing overall discovery process. And if you've seen the recording and if you've gone through this process already, the health assessment really lives in that area here, where we sit down with the customer or with the project team and collect all the call quality and reliability information. And the health assessments should be seen or is actually an addition to that module to help you to capture more insights. We are providing here you the information how you can capture the data we're asking for, and how to assess this data to determine whether an environment is healthy or whether some further remediation actions are required. So what is the baseline health assessment? So if you think about it, the on-prem components serve different things. And if you are deploying a hybrid deployment, some of the on-prem components are important for the entire user population. Even if an end user is hosted online, for the initial sign-in, they will always hit the on-premises environment first. They will always, in most cases, they will always authenticate against the on-premises environment. So you want to make sure that the on-premises environment is healthy. In addition, users that are hosted on-premises will obviously leverage the on-premises component, as well as meetings scheduled by people that are hosted on-premise will always happen on-premises. So there are a couple of things, couple of reasons why the on-premise health is quite important, and the same applies if you're going to deploy Cloud PBX with on-premise PSTN calling. In that case, some of the mediation servers and other components we have on-premises are important. So there's a number of reasons why we want to understand the current health before we continue with the deployment. So what is the outcome of the health assessment if we go through this process? So the outcome is really that you are able to answer the question if the existing Lync or Skype for Business deployment is ready for a hybrid topology. And to do this, there are a couple of things that we will be assessing throughout this baseline health assessment. First and foremost, there are some configuration prerequisites that we must meet, and we're going to go through some of the details here. There are some aspects that get down to the health of the infrastructure, which for the most part is performance related, and then there are some other health aspects which go down to the call quality and call reliability, and we need to this need to be addressed as well. And in the end, at the outcome, you will be able to identify whether the environment is in a state that you can continue with the deployment, or if there are any specific remediation actions that need to take place before you can continue with the deployment. So if we want to get this started, what are the prerequisites that need to be met for a successful assessment? So as I said earlier, this assessment is part of the discovery process. So obviously you want to be familiar with the overall discovery questionnaire and the overall discovery process. And the same applies to the baseline health assessment as well. So before you actually start to deploy this, you want to make yourself familiar with the guidance that's provided here. In addition to that, there are a couple of technical prerequisites. All of them are included in the guidance document. But in essence, we do need, or you do need read access to the on-premises environment to be able to capture the data. It might be that you already have this access and you can run the tools by yourself, or you can ask the administrator of that environment to run the data collection parts for you. Both are perfectly fine, but in the end, we want to make sure that the data is captured, and to be able to do this, we have to have this read access to the environment. And one thing I want to call out here, another part is that the workbooks and the Excel workbooks we're going to use here do require Excel 2013 or higher. I don't expect that we have a majority of Office 2010 deployments out there, but if you're still in a mixed mode, please make sure that you have an Excel 2013 or higher version available to run some of the assessments here. So let's talk a bit about the delivery aspects of the health assessment. What does it take to deploy this, to run this, and what type of guidance do we provide here? So our thesis that the health assessment provides answers to the how and where questions. Where do I find data X? How do I obtain information Y from the environment? The assessment really is a Word document, a guidance document that walks you through the data collection process, as well as specific guidance and has the detailed steps where you can capture all the information we're asking for. So what are the sections that we are addressing? There's architecture and configuration, which is important. Then we have the infrastructure health, which is really, for the most part, is the performance of the environment itself. And then there is call quality. And call quality consists of the quality of the media streams themselves. So do we have a good audio? Do we have a good video stream? Is app sharing performing as it should be? Do we have a crisp video connection here? But on the other side, there's also the call reliability part. So am I actually able to establish a call, establish and maintain a call, or do we have issues that prevent us from establishing a call at the first place? Or do we have calls that drop in the middle of a call for whatever reason? Those are the type of things we want to identify and to determine if they need to be addressed before we continue with the deployment. The assessment is structured in a way that for each of these sections, there's a checklist of key activities that need to be performed. We do provide the matrix that you need to identify whether what to look for, as well as the health indicators. So if we have a value of 5, there's guidance that tells you, well, 5 is good or 5 is bad, because otherwise you end up with a value of 5, but might not be able to determine whether this is healthy or not. And then also, as we don't like to duplicate content and things, we also include links to relevant documents out there on TechNet and public blogs that might give you some more details and some more guidance on those specific assets. So with that, let's start with the first component of the assessment, which is the architecture and configuration. For architecture and configuration, we really don't have any tools that you can leverage to capture the information. For the most part, it's really sitting down with the customer and performing an interview, as well as running some data capture manually. And as we see here, there are a couple of things that are that are relevant. We need to understand what's the current active status of the Active Directory. Do we have a supported Active Directory topology? Do we have a supported domain controller version, functional levels? Because if we are not in this stage, this would be an immediate blocker for the ongoing project. So those are the type of things we want to look for. What you see here is a screenshot of the actual Word document and the guidance, like the overview checklist that will walk you through the things you need to look for. If we then see the first component, Active Directory, within Active Directory, there are a couple of things we need to look for. We need to look for the domain controller version, the functional levels, and a few other configuration items. So, and the guidance we provide here is, if you then go into the Active Directory section in this document further down, we will provide you the guidance on how to actually capture this particular piece of information. In our case here, where you can find the forest and domain mode. So you are going to capture this and enter the information in the current state column that we have here. In this document, it's really all about capturing the data. It's not necessarily about assessing and evaluating whether this is healthy or not. This is really first and foremost the process of capturing the data. And we've thought about this, and then there's a reason why the data capture and data analysis is being kept separate, because if we would provide the guidance on what is healthy, what is unhealthy while capturing the data, we've seen some customers that are reluctant to or try to not to answer the questions they know that might end up being flagged as a risk. But in reality, I don't think that this is a good thing, because we are there to assess what are the risks, and if we identify a risk, we should address them and not try to hide it. This is why this is all about data capture, and analysis is taken care of at a different place. Talking about the analysis, if you've performed some of the discovery workshops already, you are probably familiar with the assessment evaluation workbook, and here's a screenshot of that. The evaluation workbook has sections like 3.4, where we talk about the Active Directory and the infrastructure components that are required, and there's a cross link here to the document that guides you while this information will be asked for. So whenever you perform the assessment while being on site with the project team, your task is really there to capture all the information, and then at a later point, whenever you run through the evaluation, you will use the Excel workbook and evaluate whether this particular configuration asset is healthy or unhealthy. So for the architecture and configuration, at a high level, this is really what's going to happen. There are a couple of things you need to capture, and all of them are more or less manual steps, because there is no easy way to come up with a tool that would capture it for you, because every deployment is a bit different, and turns out that this is the best way to capture all of this information. So let's continue to the next section, which is the infrastructure health. Infrastructure health is really where we start to assess the environment on a server-by-server basis to understand what is the current status of the environment. Is the environment performing well, or do we have actually some issues or some aspect that might need remediation? And we do this by leveraging the concept of the key health indicators. And I'm sure all of you are aware of the concept of the key health indicators and run this today already in your on-premises environment. So this might be just as a recap. The key health indicators is a collection of around about 80 performance counters that you can deploy to your Skype for Business servers that will give you a good indication on whether the environment is healthy or whether this particular server is healthy or not. Why do we do this? Well, Skype for Business all up has around about 8,000 performance counters. If you ask yourself where you would want to start to analyze this and to capture information, it's a bit hard because it's just too many counters there. So this is why we have the key health indicators. Having that said, 80 counters is still a lot of counters, and if 5 out of those 80s are above this threshold or below this threshold, what should you do about them? This is why there is a concept of rings 0, 1, and 2. And we're going to see this in a few bits once again. But it's really there to help you guide through the analysis process. And the key principle is make sure that ring 0 is remediated first, because ring 0 is really where all the core compute resources are. Do you have enough CPU? Do you have enough disk? Do you have enough memory and network? And if you don't have any of that, if you have an issue, let's say with disk issues, with disk performance in ring 0, it's very likely that ring 1 or ring 2, which are more the application side of the house, will have issues as well. So it might be that you see something like sprock latency is a ring 1 or a ring 2 counter being light up, but this is actually caused by something that's happening in the ring 0. And it's very likely that you might see some CPU or, in that particular example, some disk issues. So the recommendation here is really, whenever you go through those KHIs, make sure that you remediate ring 0 first before you take care of anything else. And the same applies for ring 1 and 2. There's almost no point in remediating ring 2 counters if any counters on ring 1 are still in an unhealthy range. So that's kind of the high-level concept here. So how do you do this? So you have to capture all the data and analyze the data, and I'm gonna walk you through how this works. And once the data is captured, again you would mark the current state in the current state column, and then continue with the rest of the assessment later on. Again, there's the reference to the assessment section so that you know where you can find this information or what this type of information will be assessed in the Excel workbook later on. So what do you need to do to capture all the key health indicators? First, we need to download some toolset here, which is can be found on the download page. Is the key health indicators for Lync server and Skype for Business server, which consists of the Excel workbook to help with the data analysis, as well as a PowerShell script that will help you to set up all of the performance counters. Having that said, we obviously need to deploy the key health indicator data collectors. The assumption is that most customers might have them already. If they don't have, that's a very good point in time to actually deploy them. The script, you can leverage the script to run to install the counters from a remote machine. This requires that the Windows firewall allows the performance logs and alerts connection here. Make sure that the data is captured for at least one full week, for one full business week, for the data to be meaningful. Because if you have less than that, it's likely that you miss a hotspot that might happen during the week. Let's say the customer Friday, people are most of the times in the home office, then the communication might be slightly different than if they are in the office or vice versa. So recommendation here is really to capture a full week of data. Sample rate by default should be 15 seconds because this is what we need to have meaningful data. Once the data is captured, we need to harvest, we need to collect all these CSV files and run through the Excel workbook to analyze all of this data. So some tips and tricks that you might leverage if you want to script all of the setup and the data collection. You can run a get CS computer data identity to capture a list of all servers in your environment. The output needs to be cleaned up because all of the PSTN gateways and other topology objects are included in this list. But I found this to be I always use this as a starting point whenever I need to set up the KHI collection. Then the next part is we obviously need to install the KHI collector, and there's the collector script. And here with -computer, you can specify on which computer this should be installed. And this is where the get CS computer at the first line might come handy. You also need to specify the version, whether this is a Lung 2010, 2013, or SCAP Business server. And then the last line here, logmin start KHI, is really the process to get the collection started. You can all do this using perfmon, but I personally prefer the scripted way because if I have more than 2 servers, I'd rather do this from a central point. Once we've done that, we've started the collection, we've harvested all the data files, we have to analyze them. And in the analysis, and this probably looks familiar to you if you've worked with the KHIs already, we are really interested in the KHI column here, which gives us an indication which server on which KHI or which performance counter exceeds or is within this threshold. And I'm going to walk through this in a short demo in a bit to see this in action. On the right-hand side, we do have a filter that allows us to filter on the ring 0, ring 1, ring 2, which is particularly interesting by the time you're going to use this as an analysis tool. And then there's another filter that I wanted to highlight here that helps you to filter the noise, because for the most parts I'm interested in the health that is not optimal. So whenever there's an issue, I'd like to see this. So I'm going to select the suboptimal health here, and this will remove all the healthy counters because I'm interested to see what is not healthy. So with that, we're gonna do a quick demo here. And what you will see here is I've already opened the key health indicators Excel workbook. So this is what you will download, what you'll get from the download once you extract it. And again, here's the concept of the rings. And let me maybe zoom in here a bit. Here's again the concept of the rings, where we have ring 0 is really the system KHIs, which is really the core compute resources. We have ring 1, which is network and queuing, and ring 2 is then all the rest of the application counters. Again, make sure that the inner rings are remediated before you assess anything else. So for this demo, I've already collected all of the data. And I just wanted to walk you real quick through the analysis of all the data. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start the analysis. Whenever you download this document for the first time, it might be, depending on your security settings, that active content is blocked. So you need to unblock this, otherwise this button just won't work. So we're going to do that. I have some demo data sitting on my desktop here. So what I'm going to do is I point this the Excel picker to the folder where all the CSV files that I've collected are sitting in. I'm going to hit select, and what's now going to start is the Excel will import all the CSV files, and it will tell me how many CSV files do I have and what's the size of the data. And this is relevant because depending on the number of servers and depending on the size, the import might take a few moments. I'm not going to hit OK. And then what you also see is by the time the processing starts, the status area of Excel will give you some progress. In my example, as I only have 2 files, it's going to be fairly quick. But if you have a large environment with a lot of data, it might take a while for this to continue. So in my case, all the data is already analyzed. What we see here is the first overview. On the left-hand side, we have an overview how many of my servers are healthy or unhealthy in a given ring. And on the right-hand side, we have the breakdown on a per counter level. So I can tell from this picture, if I zoom in here, I can tell that out of my 2 servers, so I only have 2 servers in my sample set here, none of these servers are healthy all up. However, if I zoom in here, I can tell that more servers in the ring 0 are unhealthy compared to the other ones. So I have 6% of the counters in ring 0 that are unhealthy, and the rest is healthy. So let's take a look. So timeline gives you a nice overview on the timeline when things happened, and it might be interesting to see when threshold validation happened, because it might be during night times if there's running a scheduled backup or there's not enough bandwidth available, something like that. But it might, so that's a good trending indicator to you. But really interesting here is the counters, the pivot tab, which allows you to dive into the data in more detail. Like I said, on the right-hand side, we have the filters. And this is the first thing I'm going to do. Right now, it is showing counters for all rings, for ring 0, 1, and 2. And it is already filtered to the suboptimal only because I'm not necessarily interested in the optimal range here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter on everything that is in ring 0, and immediately it is updated. And what I can tell here is that I do have a number of issues because there are a couple of things that aren't working in this environment. So we have some network interfaces, we have some physical disk issues, and we do see a lot of counters that are actually here in an unhealthy state. So in my example, I would need to flag the ring 0 to be unhealthy because there are obviously a number of issues that need to be remediated. Like I said, if I now go to ring 1, we will see that there are a few other counters are unhealthy as well, most probably because we are seeing some issues in the ring 0 counters. So this is really the analysis you need to do to analyze all of the CSV files. And with that, we're going to switch back to the presentation and continue with some more of the presentation here. So we've done the key health indicators. So we've gone through this. So that's gonna be fine. So the next part is we're gonna run some. We have to think about what do I need to remediate. And this is really gets down to you have to set this in context. You have to understand the scenario your deployment is in. If you are in a velocity deployment from on-premises to online, and you have rather immediate plans to deprovision all the on-premises environment, it's probably okay to remediate ring 0 counters only, as they are critical to the environment, but not so much about the ring 1 and ring 2 counters because you have plans to decommission the on-premises environment in any case. So you probably don't have to spend too much time in remediating ring 1 and ring 2 counters here. On the other hand side, if you do plan to sustain a hybrid deployment, the story might be slightly different, because in that case, you might want to understand why you're seeing issues there. You obviously need to remediate ring 0 as well as the other counters. And there are a few more tools that I wanted to highlight here. And one of them is the statistics manager, which kind of takes the KHI to the next level and gives you a tool that will do this for you, because doing this manually with Excel is great. But then if you have to do this every week or so, at some point in time, you might look for a tool that will help you here. And this tool is the statistics manager. So this is kind of the guidance I wanted to give here. Consider the scenario, and based on that, you need to remediate more or less of the counters. So the next part we're going to cover now is called quality and call reliability. Let's again talk briefly about call quality versus reliability. Reliability is really the ability to establish and maintain a call, which is quite important. And quality is really once the call is established and once the call is maintained, am I sending and receiving a high quality media stream? Is my audio quality good? Do I have clear audio? Is my video stream of a good quality? And is my app sharing, do we have a good app sharing, or is the video blurry or not good in some of the other way? So those are the two different things, and we need to identify, we need to assess both areas to be able to see where our customer is at. So for call quality and reliability, same concept applies. We have an overview slide, an overview table that guides you through the data collection process as well as the result state. In this case, there are tick boxes, so you can easily tick for each of the areas the status. And the guide has some guidance on how to actually collect the data. So how do we collect the data? What do we need to do? So to assess the environment, again, we have to download a tool set that we're going to use here, which is the call quality methodology scorecard. And there's a blog post to a blog of Jens Rasmussen. Here's a great blog post that explains the entire concept here and walks you through the how to actually use this. So I highly recommend you to visit this blog while downloading this and read through the information provided here. So whenever this tool set is downloaded, then we need to query the monitoring databases. So to be able to do this, well, we need to understand where are my monitoring databases. So I need to identify them. Hopefully the environment will have only a single monitoring database, because this really is the recommendation to have just a single monitoring database across the entire environment to have this holistic view. But there might be reasons for the customer to have more than a single monitoring database. So we want to make sure that we identify all the monitoring databases that are out there. Then the next step is we're going to run the PowerShell scripts to collect the data. And here the recommendation is to capture at least data for a full month. Remember, QE data can be purged, so it's kind of dependent on the purging configuration, but for the most part you should be able to collect at least 1 month of data. And then you're going to analyze this data using another workbook, Excel workbook. I'm going to show you this in a bit as well. So some tips and tricks here again. If you want to identify all the monitoring databases, you could use the get CS service commandlet with a -monitoring server, and as a result, you'll see a list of all monitoring databases that are deployed in your environment. Now, it might be that the environment is using SQL mirroring. In that case, you'll see even if there's only a single instance deployed, it will show up twice, the principal and the mirror. So with the get CS database mirroring state, you can identify which is the active database, because the script needs to run against the active database, as the mirroring database is in a state where we cannot run queries against it. Another detail here, as we run the collection script, we need to specify the date, so the start and the end date. And this is, so we need to understand the date format that SQL is expecting from us. And depending on the installation and the configuration of the SQL server, It might be a month, date, year, or date, month, year, or whatever the case might be. So there's a little helper script here, the get SQL date format.ps1, which will help you to capture this type of information. One tiny detail here, I always, when specifying a start and end time, I always specify the first and the last month, first and last date of that month, because that really helps me to verify if I got the date format right. And at least for myself, most of the times I didn't get it right. So, this helps me to catch this one. So we're going to run the script. This script will run, depending on the database size, it might run for a few minutes, but shouldn't take that long. So did that, captured all the data. The next step now is to import and analyze the data. Again, I would assume that most of you have seen this worksheet already, but I'm going to run through this in a short second to actually do some demo here as well. So this worksheet is really there to analyze all the data and provide you with some information on where you are. Again, there are two things or a couple of things that we need to cover here. First, we need to specify the decimal separator in the CSV files, because again, depending on the SQL configuration, it might be a comma, it might be a dot. And the same applies to the date format. So we need to specify whether it's day, month, year, month, day, year, or whatever the case might be. Then we're going to import and process the data. And with that, we're going to do another demo here to actually go through this data and see what's going on here. So in the meanwhile, I've opened the called Quality Methodology Scorecard. Again, this is part of the download. Jens has a great blog post explaining this in great detail, but I'm going to give you a quick rundown here on what that actually is. So like I said, the first thing before we actually start to import is we need to identify the decimal separator and the date format for of the input files. Now, I don't know the input format just right now. So what I would suggest you to do is open one of these CSV files. In my case, I've opened the trend for a wired. So that is a good candidate here. And if we go down here, I can tell that this is day, month, year. And I can also tell that the decimal separator here is a comma. So open this any of the trend CSV files, scroll a little bit down and identify the date format as well as the decimal separator, and configure the CQM workbook so that the import works successfully. So did that. We have a comma, we have a date, month, year. We also have the ability to specify any off work days, because if we run some statistics here, where most of the times we're not interested in the weekends, because those might screw some of the reporting. And there's also a streams cutoff number, which is relevant because as we talk about the call quality of a specific segment or of a specific subnet, if we have a subnet that has only 5 streams or 5 calls on a day, and 2 of them are bad, this ends up in a pretty bad percentage. So this is why we kind of filter out everything where we don't have at least 100 streams per subnet, per device, per what have you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to import all the data and process the data. So the first step here is I'm going to do the import. And again, it will ask me where my data is. I have my my sample data folder here. So you would point this to the CSV file that you've collected through the PowerShell script. I will do the import here. And then I have to go through all the other steps as well. Now the data is imported. I'm going to do the remove of work days. The next part is I'm going to go to create some stream distribution charts, and I'm going to go through this in a bit. I'm also going to create the trending charts that gives us a nice overview on the trending on particular scenarios. I want to create the reliability charts that give us an overview on the call reliability, peer-to-peer, as well as conferencing. Gonna create the top issue list. And then last but not least, we're gonna update the scorecard. And the scorecard is if you run the assessment itself, the scorecard is really the one we're interested in, because the scorecard gives us a nice overview on what's going on here. So I can tell from this data here that in the server plant, the connection from the AVMCU, so from my conferencing servers to the mediation server is good. So this is healthy. But then if we go further down, there are some issues with the wired connection. So in my example here, I need to check the wired connection to be yellow because there's something going on here. And for the sake of the health assessment, this is really the level of detail you need to go into. If we scroll further down, we can see that this environment had some issues with conferencing. So conferencing dial tone, as well as conference completed sessions are unhealthy. So this is an area that needs further investigation. For the assessment, this level of detail is enough. If you ask yourself, well, that's great that there's an issue, but what is the issue actually? You can start with the top issues that would list at which date, which client subnet had the most issues, and what was the poor call ratio of that particular area. So this is something that, whenever we see issues with wired subnet or wireless subnets, the first part where we need to investigate what's going on here, and we probably need to understand in this particular environment what is this IP subnet and why do we have a poor stream ratio of above 15%. It's because if 15% of those streams in that particular subnet are of poor quality, something's just wrong there. So we need to identify this. The other one that I wanted to highlight here real quick is the reliability chart, because this gives you some good indication on what's going on in this environment from a reliability standpoint. So the blue area here that you see is the total volume of calls. So from this chart, we can see that the number of conferences increase over time, which generally speaking is good. But then we can also see that the number of fails to establish sessions, as well as the mid-call conference failures, are steady. So there's, it's not getting better, but it's not getting worse. But it's definitely worth investigation, because if we're having issues with reliability, that's something we need to understand. And in this particular example, we had a bit more than 1% of conference calls that A, could not be established, or B, had a mid-call drop. So that's something that definitely needs to be investigated, because we want to understand what is causing those issues. It might be that they're having network issues that cause a call to drop. It might be that the device driver is causing call drops as well. And both of the two, be it network issues, be it a driver issue, will persist if you move a user from on-premises to online, because it's very likely that they'll still be using the same network or still using the same devices and driver. So having a good understanding on where this customer is and what this environment is in the journey, and what issues they have is really important from that point of view. So with that, let's go back to the presentation and talk about the scenarios that we need to cover here. So similar to the key health indicators, we need to consider the scenario. If we have if we want to establish hybrid for the purpose of moving people to online rather fast, there's only a subset of data that is relevant to you. And those are the last mile, which is really the connection of the endpoints, the connection that your clients are using, wireless connections, as well as the endpoints. And you want to remediate them with higher priority over the server plant components, because again, as you are going to decommission the server environment on premises, there's probably not a big need to remediate issues that are caused by the servers. If you are in a situation where you are going to have a sustained hybrid deployment, the story is slightly different. Then you obviously would want to implement procedures around it and be in control of those type of things. And those is, again, like for KHIs with Stutzman. For call quality data, it's going to be CQD. And the recommendation here is that you then implement CQD on premises if you haven't done this already, and as well as leverage CQD online to have a good view and good understanding on the data that's going on here. So with that, let me recap what we've talked about. So we went through all the data collection. As a reminder, we talked about all the data capture first and foremost, and then you will assess the data in the process going forward. And at some point in time, you might go back to the data that we've captured here to come up with remediation steps and recommendations. What you can do here to improve the quality going forward. So why do you want to run the health assessment? So to me, it's really the point of whenever I do those type of deployments, I really want to understand the current situation, because I have to deal with any problems that come up in any way, regardless whether they are caused by the on-premises environment, whether they might be caused on the project or for whatever reason. I'd like to understand what problems, what is the situation that exists today, so that we can address any remediation ahead of time and don't find out at a later time that we should have done something earlier. So this really is my takeaway here. Use the tools that we've run through as your guide and your ability to assess the environment before you start with the deployment, with the project, so that you don't end up have to deal with problems that existed early on already. So having that said, SOF itself is a living framework, and we continue to work on updating the assets and deliver new offers. One key thing for us that drives our updates is feedback from you. So please go to the scopeoperationsframework.com website. There's a feedback section. Provide feedback to the session, provide feedback to the assets that you have, share things that worked good, share things that didn't work, or things that you would wish we should invest in. And also we have the community, which you can find on aka.ms/SOF-community. Use this as your community to share and discuss things that you've done, or if you have questions, please use this as a way to get connected to others that are implementing SOF or leveraging SOF and stay connected with them. So with that, I'm always at the end of my part of the presentation. So we have a couple of recordings already up on the website, and the one I wanted to highlight here is there's a session on discovery and readiness assessment, which really is the overarching activity that you would do whenever you need to perform the health assessment, because this provides all the guidance. So even if you have not gone through this through the discovery and readiness assessment training, I highly recommend you to go to the Academy side and see this recording. And with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Janice.
All right, thank you, Martin. All right, audience, we're going to be starting our Q&A session in just a moment. Just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, simply type it into the white text box on the right-hand side of your screen, or by scrolling down to just below the video player and entering it there. Before we start Q&A, though, if you've not already found it, I'd like to bring your attention to a link on the upper right-hand side of the viewing window that says Survey Link. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference, and we ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you found today's information helpful, and if you enjoyed today's web conference or have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, this is your chance to let us know. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Martin so we can get into Q&A. Martin, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Janice. So one question here is related to the discovery questionnaire. And the question is if the health assessment is a replacement for the discovery questionnaire, if we're doing a hybrid deployment. And my view on this is really that the health assessment is an addition to the discovery questionnaire. It's not there to replace one or the other. The discovery questionnaire covers a lot of questions, technical aspects, organizational aspects. Do you have the right people we talk to? Do we have an executive sponsor, etc.? Those are relevant regardless of the deployment type, whether it's greenfield online or whether it's hybrid. But the health assessment is really there to augment all the data capture for the on-prem environment. Another question here is around customers that already have deployed Skype for Business online, Skype for Business on premises, and they are quite mature in their operations, and they are leveraging all of the tools already, like CQD is implemented, Stuxnet is implemented, and the question is, do I really have to run the manual data capture again, or can I leverage some of the already collected data? Well, in the end, it really doesn't matter where the data comes from. I personally would try to run the scripts and tools as provided as part of the assessment here, because then you have a consistent approach and you're always leveraging the same thresholds. And there are some minor differences, like CQD on premises does not have great visibility into the devices, whereas the CQD script does have some more insight into the devices. So yes, you can reuse existing data that has been collected through CQD or Stuxnet, but I personally would recommend you to run the manual data collection here to have a consistent approach across the board. All right, I don't see any more questions, so I'm gonna want to thank you for staying with me. Hope this was helpful for you. And I'm gonna hand it over to Janice.
All right, thank you, Martin. All right, audience, the recording for today's presentation will be available on Skype operationframework.com/academy. You will also receive an email 72 hours post-conference with details on where to access that. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter, Martin Renes, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today. This concludes today's web session, and you may now disconnect from the broadcast.